Hey folks, this is Bailey from Dank Wargaming, and welcome to the Path to Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 Dark Angels podcast, where I give you all of the tactical tricks and hobby skills that you need in order to participate in this wonderful hobby of ours. Now, as you can see, I'm by myself right now. Heath is not with me. Heath will join us later in the podcast. What has happened is that July has been a hectic month for both Heath and I, and our schedules just did not mesh very well, which is why you're seeing this podcast at the end of August, unfortunately. So we're going to, so even though we're a little bit late, we're going to try and cover the July material that we had lined up. So I'm going to be covering sort of the normal segments that I'm sort of the lead on, such as new releases, which there really aren't anything unless you consider the new Kill Team box coming out, the monthly challenge, the Metawatch, and the community interaction on YouTube and Facebook and places like that. Whereas Heath is going to be doing what would be normally our main segment, which is a discussion on being involved in the Warhammer community, joining the Warhammer 40,000 community with his two guests, friends of his out in Hawaii, Mars and Joe. So without further ado, let's hop in. So with the new releases, as I mentioned, for July, really there wasn't anything that super big. There was a Warzone book release, but I don't believe there's any Dark Angels material in it. They previewed another one that I also believe didn't have any Dark Angels material, so don't need to worry too much about that. You have the new Kill Team rules coming out, so if you like to play Kill Team as a Dark Angels player, normally I'm not a participant in any sort of miniatures game that requires less than about 100 models, even though most of my Dark Angels armies now aren't about 100 models. The idea is that I could do it if I wanted to, and so the fact that Kill Team sort of limits you on the number of units you can have, just never been interested in the smaller skirmish games, but if you are one of those people, then by all means, the new edition is out. Get excited. There's that cool new orc terrain, so you don't just have to worry about destroyed Imperial cities to fight over anymore. You can actually fight over an orc camp, which I think is pretty neat. You see the new Death Corps of Krieg, so if the time comes where Dark Angels players might want to consider giving up some of their powerful mono-faction rules in order to ally in some, let's say, some new Death Corps of Krieg models when their book comes out, the Imperial Guard book, you know, maybe that's something to think about going forward since they're both Imperium and they can be in the same army together. But looking at Metawatch for July, we have a couple different lists that did fairly well we're going to take a look at. So we're going to look at the Gibraltar GT. Right, Gibraltar, it's that small little territory at the very tip of Spain, so the tip of Spain across the Mediterranean from Morocco. There we have this guy. His name is Zakthrastra, something like that. Sorry if I'm getting your name wrong, but I do want to commend you on getting 4th place at the Gibraltar GT. All right, this guy, he was running a list that had Deathwing Knights. He had 2 squads of them, actually, which is nice to see them because, you know, they don't have the -1 penalty for that a Thunderhammer has, but they still have the AP, the strength bonus, and the damage outlay. So very, very powerful. You have the regular Deathwing Terminator squad that's got Thunderhammers and Storm Shields along with a Cyclone Missile Launcher. You have lieutenants in terms of the Super Talon Master with the Rights of War and the Arbiter's Gaze, Samael, then some Black Knights, the Attack Bite combos. There's only 6 of them, you don't have the total of 9, and that works out to about 2,000 points. And with that, he got 4th place, so congratulations to you. Next, we had a Dark Angels list at the, hold on, let me get to it. The Victorian Throwdown, of course, how could I forget this? Because it's our previous guest on the show, Thomas Ogden, playing that one more GT that he told us about in the podcast a few months ago as a Dark Angels player. And again, he's running a variation of the list that he was running previously, where he's got the double Landspeeder Vengeance, and then the 9 attack bikes with an Apothecary, 2 Talon Masters, Samael. He doesn't have nearly as many Deathwing Command Squads, so I guess that's where he was shaving points compared to what he had before. He has added a Relic Contemptor Dreadnought, though, which I find very, very interesting. And with this, he took the Victorian Throwdown, or there's also Big E and Big A as well, and a Vanguard detachment. So it's that Vanguard Outrider detachment that he was running before, and he'd won several events. And so he's done what he said, Mr. Ogden, and won once again with a list that he's been running for all summer and being very successful with it. So congratulations to him. He kept his word for us Dark Angels player and has shown us the light, and I'm very interested to find out what he's going to be doing going forward. believe there may have been another Dark Angels player at this tournament. I'm going to check and make sure. No, there was not. Now, I know there was another one, got second place. This was the Chaos Storm GT in Indianapolis. So this is one that's pretty close to home for me. Unfortunately, I was busy that weekend, so I couldn't attend. But I had a friend go, played Custodes, and he actually played this list. And he said it was really, really brutal. So Aaron Towler got second place at the Chaos Storm GT. And he was running a regular lieutenant, a tactical squad. So think about that. When's the last time you ran a tactical squad in your Dark Angels list? Primaris Apothecary, who was the chief apothecary, a full 10-man scout squad with shotguns. All right, when's the last time you saw Dark Angel scouts? He's got attack bikes, but they have heavy bolters instead of multi-meltas. Interesting. And then he has the plasma inceptors, and then 2 devastator squads with grav cannons and a heavy bolter in one, and then all plasma cannons in the other. So devastators, firstborn devastators are still pretty powerful. For 135, 155 points, you're bringing an awful lot of bang, which is good. And plus you have the +1 to hit for not moving, so as long as you don't move them, they're hitting on 2s, and so they can ignore a -1 if they're shooting through dense cover or someone pops lightning fast reflexes on their Eldar unit. Plus you have to remember that the sergeant, I believe he still gives the +1 to hit bonus to one model in the unit. And if you have a heavy bolter, you can still do the Hellfire shells that was so popular before. And you have the munitions cherub that can reload and shoot one model once per game a second time. So there's all sorts of things you can do with these squads and get out a lot of damage. There's a Rhino that you can put either your attack squad or your scout squad or your devastator squads into. There's a Land Speeder Storm, which does not have the capacity for all those scouts, but it's still there. I'm starting to see this in a lot of Dark Angel or just Marines lists in general. At the event I was helping run a couple weeks ago, that was a team tournament. There was a Blood Angels player that was running a Land Speeder Storm, and the fact that it's an open-topped vehicle that can move 18 inches in a Space Marines book, it's, for 55 points, it's really, really fast, can get on objectives. It's not a huge investment if it dies, and it's got a little, it's above T4, T5. It's in the T5, I believe, range. I don't think it's T6, if I remember correctly. But the fun thing is you can put 5 scouts in there, and all of a sudden it's a gun platform. You can put a heavy bolter in there. You can put a missile launcher in there. And so for about 100 or so points, or a little over 100 points, you can have this little gunboat running around doing things that people are really only expecting Drukhari to do, but you're a Space Marines doing it. So if you really want to just kind of mess with people, you can start running one of those. Tyler also had Ezreal, a Deathwing Ancient, a big squad of Terminators, 2 big squads of Terminators, and a Ravenwing champion with the Reliquary of the Repentant, so we can run him up there and reduce people's invulns, which will be really big now that we know that we're in August, right, that you're going to see Thousand Suns and Grey Knights codexes coming out soon, and they're going to have invuln saves out the wazoo, so having something that reduces the efficiency of their invuln saves will be a very big deal. Also at this event, I believe there was one more Dark Angels player. Yes, so Scott Ferguson is 7th. He was running something very similar to Thomas Ogden's list, apparently, and this is all, of course, according to Goonhammer and their competitive innovations for July. So, with that being said, I'm going to go away for a little bit. I'm going to splice in Heath and Mars and Joe, and they're going to talk to you about how much fun it is to get into the Warhammer 40K community, what that looks like, sort of the anxieties that people have, how to get over them, how to make friends, and how to just enjoy yourself. And since, we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic still, why having a hobby like this is so beneficial in that time period. So, catch you all on the other side.
So, here we are with a special community engagement and outreach segment for the podcast. I've got with me in studio, which is my friend's house, 2 guest speakers. I have Joe.
Hey, how's it going?
And this is Mars.
Hello there.
I assure you, Mars is actually his real name. This is not a pseudonym. So I chose these 2 individuals because, 1, we're all hanging out playing games today, and 2, I've got 2 ends of the spectrum for length of time playing this game. So, Joe, how long have you been playing 40K?
Well, I guess the first game was 8 or 9 years ago, but I didn't get into it until about 3 months ago. So a little bit of experience, more seriously, about 3 months.
Yeah, I remember you played a little bit back in 5th edition, and then just like me, you ended up going back to sea duty, and it's hard to hard to play this game when you're spending 200 something days a year at sea and 80 hours a week at work, and when you're actually in port. So on the other hand, Mars, how long have you been playing?
32 years.
So yeah, we got Old Hammer. I've been playing for nearly 20 myself, but Mars has been in this for a minute. So
Did the game get better when they invented plastic?
Yes.
and that's not
And that's not even a joke.
it's not even a joke. So yeah, we used to have pewter miniatures, ladies and gentlemen.
We used to have lead.
We used to have lead miniatures. So it's healthy.
Just don't eat them.
Just don't eat them. So, all right. Well, in that case, let's just cast the broad net here. Mars, how do you think the community has evolved in the last 32 years?
First of all, it's gotten a lot larger. We used to struggle to find people to play with. There was no organization in stores. Most stores didn't even have places to play unless it was an official GW store
I do remember that, having to go to like a GW battle bunker in Maryland
to play.
and it was really nice to play there. Way better than my little friendly local game store in upstate New York where I lived at the time. But yeah.
And I didn't see a GW store until 92. So I never played in a game store before that. It was always at home with one friend who played the games sometimes as well.
Mhm.
And it was Rogue Trader, so it wasn't exactly friendly rules either.
Yeah. How'd you get into the game?
I saw the Rogue Trader book and I saw the cover of that classic Crimson Fist surrounded by orcs, and the captain with the orc head raised above like he's going to club another orc with it. It kind of grabbed my imagination, so I grabbed that book, which was about 2 months of allowance.
Yeah. And Joe, how about you?
You gave me your Blood Angels army.
That's fair. I did. It's my fault. So,
Yeah.
Was that before or after we were roommates?
After.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it was around the same time.
Pretty close to the same time.
We knew each other for, I want to say, a year and a half, 2 years before you convinced me to go down to the game store with you on a Monday after work to meet Mars. That's where I met Mars. And
Yeah.
kind of had our first little, I guess what would now be known as a kill team game, where we just had about 500 points to mess around with. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So you'd say that, what was the things about it at the time? This is, once again, back in 2010-ish,
Yeah,
I think. What was the things about it that intrigued you at the time?
that's a good question that you guys played, I guess, for one.
Fair enough.
Everybody wants to play, the things their friends are doing, have common interests. I think at the time it was all about the strategy at first, and then like a little bit of the modeling and the painting. Like I kind of assumed, I've never been artistic with anything. I would say modeling and painting is the first kind of artistic thing I've ever done and enjoyed.
I seem to, if you'll mind me just kind of making an observation, I seem to think that is one of the things you've enjoyed most about it. In the last 3 or 4 months when you've really started playing the game again.
Yeah, in the end, well, close. I do enjoy painting and modeling much more now than I did then, as I've gotten a little practice.
Why do you say that?
Why do I enjoy the painting
Yeah.
and modeling? Just kind of learning new techniques, well, first of all, I started with your Blood Angels army, so trying to expand someone else's army kind of limits the creativity, I think.
Yeah.
Starting my own Necron army, I just got to start from scratch, and I really enjoyed that. The thing I like most about the game now, probably what got me back into it, is the lore. Like, we talked about the lore off and on for as long as we've known each other, but I
Yeah.
never really understood it or enjoyed it until I started watching some of the YouTube videos that you recommended, and I just never had any idea it was so complex and cool.
What were some of those YouTube channels that you were following?
Almost exclusively Oculus Imperia.
Yeah, for sure.
That dude's ridiculous. And just like the voice acting, the storytelling is just very, very capturing. And hearing some of the stories, just and kind of like thinking about how it all played out, it was very hard for me to understand the whole timeline until I listened to some of those videos. And now just like seeing the scope, the scale, and just the gruesomeness, the darkness, it's been pretty captivating for me.
So Mars, I know you've come in and out of the game a few times over the 30 plus years you've been playing. What has pushed you out and then subsequently pulled you back in?
Like you guys, deployments, because I was in the Navy, I had the same problem from time to time. You're just somewhere that you can't play, or you're not in a place long enough to really find a group to play with. Sometimes it's driven me out. Like I wasn't a big fan of 8th edition. It just kind of got a little crazy. But mostly it was just moving me in and out. It's really the only rules edition that really turned me off.
So 9th edition has brought you back in, whereas 8th had turned you off. What about 9th edition compared to 8th really is like there's a lot of people that were turned off by 6th and 7th, but 8th brought them back in. And I recall playing, like when I got back into playing, which was at the start of 8th edition, I played with you a few times, and then I really took off with it. But you said, well, maybe this edition isn't quite for me. So
I like Ninth's objectives. It adds such a refreshing thing to the game that is not just wipe your opponent out, which has been almost every previous edition, to be perfectly honest.
that's true.
And so that change has breathed absolutely new life into this game for me. Just everything I want. The fact that you can win a game and lose your entire army if you play cagey enough, and it makes those thematic last moment stands really more memorable if you can win one.
Yeah. Over the 30-something you've been playing, how many people would you say you've tried to, recruit or bring into the hobby?
Oh, goodness. Dozens. Absolutely dozens.
So how has the process for doing that changed over that time?
So in the beginning, I didn't really try to recruit too many people in Rogue Trader or Second. I played Second Edition in Japan, and language barriers being what they were. Third Edition made it much more accessible to everybody.
I will observe that 3rd edition is where I started playing as well, back in 2001-ish, 2002. So
the tightening of the rules, the putting them in one easier location, because 2nd edition got out of hand with every manual for everything, and it wasn't even just a book for this unit and a book for this unit. It was a book that had stuff for this unit, this unit, this unit, and then another book that had stuff for this unit, this unit, and it was even worse than it is now. So rewriting the rules, making them simpler, putting it all in one location, and basically starting from scratch from 3rd edition made it a lot easier to bring people in. Really, really did. And the rules were a lot easier to understand.
okay.
3rd edition was one of the least complex of all the editions.
True. I would agree with that. So compared to 3rd edition, how does recruiting someone in 5th edition and then now 9th edition, how has that strategy changed?
Going from 5th to 9th?
Yeah.
I would say 5th wasn't too hard to bring in. 9th has the advantage of the internet. We didn't really have that much internet in 5th edition. It was there, but it was real baseline. And now we have the aforementioned Oculus Rift. And we've got battle reports left and right. And we got people previewing the codexes, people showing us how to assemble stuff, how to modify stuff, how to paint stuff. That all just makes it so much easier for like Joe to go in and go, yeah, this makes sense. This is really cool. Rather than me spending 4 hours trying to explain one aspect.
I mean, it also seems to me, not being a part of this for all that long, this is an uneducated observation, but it seems like Games Workshop is a little bit more kind of engaged and interested in making like cool models and cool products and stuff. Obviously, they're making a ton of money off it, but I just feel like it's easier. Like, you guys can tell me, like, have they always had like those big boxes with the 2 forces in it, or?
That's a good question.
They started in 3rd edition.
Well,
Because you
3rd
had
edition
was
was So, but they were always starter boxes. That was like the beginning of an edition box.
Correct.
That wasn't like a product launch where they said, "Hey, here's 2 boxes and 2 codexes."
Not like the latest one with the Grey Knights and the Thousand Suns.
Yeah, or the Psychic Awakening. Like the release cycle, from what I recall, back in like 5th edition, it was you got a codex once every 9 to 10 months. And it usually was accompanied by like a big product release cycle. They would refresh some models, release it, and then you got an FAQ maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, and that was it. Like the game was not balanced on a continuous fashion, and
FAQs had to be printed back then. So
they were not electronically distributed. Yeah. So and like I think one of the I agree with Mars in that one of the things that makes this game much more balanced, and accessible, is the fact that GW is finally paying focus to missions, and it's impossible to balance a game if you don't control the victory conditions. So to me, that's one of the things that makes it like, now we see things like actions and the way objective secured works, and they do all those things with the intent that they interact with the game in a very specific way. Whereas with before, there's the 6 or 8 missions that were in the book that you rolled for, and that was really it.
And look, we are 3 total games into a Crusade right now. It's been going great. Not so much for me, but for you guys, it's been going great. And just like having some aspect of the game that can be a narrative, like to the level that the storyline and the lore and the books are, is pretty cool. Like it adds a little something to the imagination when you're not just mindlessly murdering each other on a 44 by 60 mat, but you're instead like trying to gather gather points or objectives or make people better, explore a planet. I like that.
It adds a lot more dimension and diversity to the game. Something that was lacking for, and GW tried in the past. They really, really succeeded this time.
Yeah, the Crusade system is very rich. And I said, I'm looking forward to being able to play more of that. I said, with everything that's going on in the world these days, it is a little tough to get together on a regular basis. But
is something going on?
Well, I'm not trying to make this. So, but yeah, the Crusade is I think it's a great gateway because a lot of people, that are played this game, they look at it, and the conversation is for a lot of part dominated by the competitive meta, right? Because that's what everyone talks about, right? That's what the podcast say, and everyone wants to play the game at a high level. But in reality, like, you don't need to do that.
No.
Yeah, and you like, all I really want to do is I want to play the games with my friends, right?
Yeah.
And share the same enjoyment of the hobby. And if they're not going to do that at a tournament, that's cool. And Crusade gives us another method, another way, to do that. That is completely separate and divergent from that competitive meta.
And that was kind of my point with the box too, right? Where like if I had to start a new army for the first time and I'm sitting there buying a box of 10 warriors for $50, like it's going to be hard to scale up fast enough to where I can play a game and enjoy it. But if you can just like buy half of a box and have a Crusade ready, like Indominus Force, like ready to go, that's it's just more accessible.
Yeah, most of the Battle Force boxes now are just right around 25 power level, so it's perfect for starting Crusade.
Yeah, right.
And which is really easy to bring new people in with.
And they're actually very well balanced. It used to be it was just whatever sprues. I think it was whatever sprues they had left over in the warehouse. And like, why is there a Viper in this box? It doesn't make any sense.
Who would take one Viper?
Yeah, every Eldar player's got has 5 Vipers they had since 1993. So
guilty as charged.
Yeah. You're not being attacked right now. This is a safe place.
You got a couple of those messing me up as we speak.
Yeah. So, well, Joe, if you were going to try and bring someone into the game right now, how would you do it?
Well, I would do the responsible thing and make sure they had enough expendable income to not have this ruin their lives.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's true.
More expensive hobby than I originally assumed. I think that when I talk to people about it, and as the one of the three of us still working on a ship, on a submarine, a lot of people are interested in kind of various hobbies. Not a lot of people know about 40K. And, it has some stigma. It's like the nerd game or, the guys who are bringing their billions of little toys to a table or whatever. And I think the selling point that I've used, or the way I've tried to explain it, is it is expensive, but it's like 5 hobbies in one. And all of which, like, I really am enjoying, right? So, I mean, there's the hobby of modeling, painting. There's like the kind of the meta like strategy of putting lists together and seeing how the lists are balanced. There's the actual playing, and then just immersing yourself in the lore is kind of its own hobby.
Yeah, I completely agree.
You just get a lot out of it.
You really do. It's like your dollar value, your time that hobby time you get per dollar spent is really good. You only spend like 2 to 3% of your time actually playing the game.
That's right.
The bulk of it is in the modeling the hobby, just
army building,
or like just scheming in your beats lab, trying to figure out what's going on and how to make the new hotness,
annoying your friends with hundreds of pictures of your latest model,
which is fine.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that's how we do. So
I mean, compare it to like I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering in high school, and I don't think I got any enjoyment out of that hobby other than the minutes you spend playing the game. Like, you can't sit there and
you can sit there and deck build,
sure,
but
and I guess it was fun opening like boxes or packs or whatever to see what you got. But I don't know, there's just a lot to this hobby. You get a lot out of it.
So to go back to one of your earlier points, I think that the stigma against like nerd hobbies and maybe not tabletop wargaming, because that's pretty far down the spectrum of a nerd hobby, but things like Dungeons and Dragons and comic books are a lot more accessible in culture these days. Have we seen, you guys think that this is kind of moving towards the mainstream? Like,
yes.
Mars, you got the longest perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, beforehand, it said it was totally nerd thing. We played practically in closets. We never told anybody what we did. It was a good way to get teased or beat up in school. You never saw girls play. See girls play all the time.
Yeah.
40K as well as this. So definitely becoming more accessible, more open, more people do it. You see it portrayed on screen between Stranger Things and doing his Blackstone Fortress thing. I mean, you would have never seen that even 5 years ago.
Well, and you could probably do a whole nother podcast about just society in general and how communication is continuing to destigmatize hobbies and like you can like anything go on the internet and find 100 other people that like the same thing, right? So I don't know if there's more people that like it, like based on how many people are exposed to it, but it was hard to find each other before.
True. Yeah. I'll point out just one of the statistics I got. Our local 40K Facebook page on here for the island of Oahu, we've got probably close to 300 members, but we have a hard time getting 15 people to show up for a tournament, even pre-COVID. But we did this, I think, at the beginning of June. The local game store sponsored a learn how to play 40K day, where we opened the store and probably 35 people showed up.
And we could only have room for 30.
We were only able to have 30 because of gathering restrictions. But we put out tables. We provided terrain for people that had used to know how to play before, then came to start playing 9th edition, and then for people that hadn't played before but wanted to try and learn, we provided not just tables but also armies and active coaching on site to try and get more people in the game. And I think of the 2 games that I coached, one was a father and his son, and there was another woman and her boyfriend that both went right downstairs and bought a lot of models.
They also signed up for the next tournament.
They also signed up for the next tournament. So I would say that if you want to try and get people into the game, don't lead with the tournament. No, lead with the lore, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And start with the, hey, like, you want to say you got to understand your audience. Know that if someone is, kind of has that bent towards, I guess, fantasy storytelling, Warhammer's not really science fiction, it's science fantasy, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So then there's a possibility that they can get excited about it, right? And that's what you want to try and do.
And you also want to start small. Like I said, the 25 power level in the new starter boxes are really, really good. You don't want to overwhelm anybody when they first get in. Not with rules. You overwhelm with lore, not rules.
Yeah, it's all about how cool it is, right? It'll once the seed is planted, it will grow.
Yes.
Well, here's another observation too. Like going back to 2010, when I went to the comic store for my first time, one of my apprehensions was I kind of, speaking of stereotypes, had this kind of preconceived notion of what any sort of gaming community would be like. And I kind of imagined, like the comic book guy on The Simpsons or a bunch of people saying technically and making fun of me for not knowing stuff. And that was all like super intimidating. And just walking into that new community was tough, until you dragged me in there. And then I met Mars, who's, one of the best teachers I've ever met. And it's just been a very supportive community overall. Like usually it's, a lot of like competitiveness, it feels like with like kind of niche hobbies. But in this one, it's just a lot of support, help, and, good conversation. Really enjoyed all the people I've met.
Yeah, don't be a gatekeeper. Yeah, it's niche hobbies like this. You have to always be bringing in new blood, otherwise you're just going to stagnate and die.
And be nice. You want to keep them coming back. You want your tournaments to be big. You want your local gaming group to be big. The more people you have, the more opportunities you have to play. The more different armies you get to play, the more fun you have.
The more perspective you get. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So not just diversity of armies, but diversity of opinion, diversity of thought. Like we had our local competitive tournament team, the Table War Hawaii. We had one Necron player on there for the longest time, and he played weird off meta stuff that I had never seen on YouTube. But he showed up at the table, like, all right, Necrons, this is like end of 8th edition. Like I've got not Space Marine army. I'm like, all right, this will be all right. It was not okay. He knew that army so well because he'd been playing it and just doing weird off-meta stuff that caught me off guard. So those are the kind of people you want to try and bring in.
Absolutely.
It was your flesh bodies that slowed you down, I think.
Yeah. I'm sure it was. So, will you guys have any other thoughts, opinions?
Well, I guess kind of my last thought here is that this turned out to be a perfect quarantine-friendly hobby. So I bet there's a lot of people out there who have yet to emerge from their little quarantine tomb worlds with their new army they've been painting for a year and a half. And hope to see them soon.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So just try and be there to help them smooth that transition. Like you can come out of this with more people to hang out with and more friends that will enjoy the same things you enjoy. And that's what we're here for.
Be nice, be inclusive when the new people show up. been painting for the last year and a half, assembling their armies, and they're going to have lots of questions. Try your best to answer them. And for the people who come out, always remember, have fun when you play, and if you lose, you learn more from losing than you actually do from winning. So don't get discouraged, because when you do win, it means more.
That's true. All right. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for sitting down with me.
Oh, it's fun.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed listening to Mars, Joe, and Heath talk about what it's like to get into the Warhammer 40,000 community. And I know I learned an awful lot and saw a lot of similarities in my own journey in the hobby, listening to them talk earlier when I was working on this podcast. So I hope you all enjoyed it too. Thinking about Heath, we're going to take a look at the monthly challenge. And both Heath and I have completed the monthly challenge from last month. We actually got it done within a month. We didn't, since the podcast is coming out late, didn't mean that the articles and things were done late. I got an article up on the Dankless Wargaming blog about how to play Warhammer 40,000 or just wargaming in general. I try to stretch out to the bigger community, writing about the not Legend of the Five Rings, that's a card game. The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, which is a book on how to be a better samurai from the middle, or like the Renaissance, late Middle Age period in Japan, and just sort of some of his philosophies about combat and how it works and how you can apply that to wargaming in yourself in order to become a better player. Heath talked about how he and his friends organized a huge event in Hawaii when they first started to open up from the COVID-19 pandemic, which, having talked to Heath the other day on the phone, unfortunately they're having a pretty big swing back into it, unfortunately, and it's causing them to not be able to do as much 40K as he would like, but it is what it is. But he was talking about this introductory event where they had all sorts of people come in and they paired up new players with older players at 500 points, and they just sort of did a huge walkthrough in their local game store and how successful it was in getting people into the hobby. So if you want to see these things for yourselves, I've got the link in the description below, and you can go read about how to be a better samurai, Dark Angel samurai at that, Deathwing sword master, something like that, and how to help organize events in your own community in order to help it grow, because what's the point of playing Warhammer 40,000 if you have no one else to enjoy this wonderful hobby with you? I did manage to talk to Heath. For next month, our challenge is going to be how we're going to do a Deathwing character. All right, so we've done a Ravenwing character previously on the podcast, so now we're going to hack up and model one of the new Deathwing characters. So you have the Champion, the Apothecary, you can do an Ancient. You also have that new Lieutenant that came out. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. The Strike Master, I believe. I have some things I might use as a Strike Master that are just alternatively modeled Deathwing Knights that I made a while back, because I used the hooded heads on something else. Or I think I traded them away, unfortunately. I shouldn't have done that. Those heads are really valuable, hard to get right now. But I have some guys that could be one, but I like them as my Deathwing Knights, so I might have to hobby up one of my own, make them a little more ornate. So that's going to be our challenge for next month, is we have to make a Deathwing character from the Codex and add it to our army. So going on to community interaction, we only had one comment that I found this week, and this is from Scott Staub. He said, nice interview. Thomas Ogden gave out some great info, and he had some interesting takes on the units he uses. Glad he's going to give the Dark Angels another go at the next big tournament. And luckily, now we've had all this time pass, we can see that Thomas not only went on to the next big tournament with Dark Angels, but he won it again. So thank you for giving us the idea of interviewing some of these big tournament players, Scott, because I think you were one of the people that were asking about that a couple months ago. And we got the interview, and Thomas got the W. So congratulations to everyone involved. Well, unfortunately, this is the end of our podcast for the month. It's kind of crazy the way we had to film it, but that's just the way the circumstances are. He's had a lot of stuff come up at work, and he's also on the board of his HOA in Hawaii, so he's had a lot of extra duties he's had to worry about. I myself am moving right now and trying to find a new job, so this is actually the last podcast you're going to see from me in my normal base of operations, and you'll see me somewhere completely new for the next podcast. Fingers crossed. So, thank you all for listening to this month's podcast, this episode of The Path to Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 Dark Angels podcast. Our next episode will hopefully come out in August/September, based on how this one's gone. So please subscribe, like, and comment below if you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on your preferred podcasting service. Last but not least, we would like to thank Purple Planet for the use of their music. And until next time, I'm Billy from Dankless Wargaming. Stay loyal, Angels.